And so this brings us to this is recording two here. This brings us to Microsoft Management Console. As we discussed, MMC is composed of snap-ins, and snap-ins help us manage computers. So we saw a couple of examples. We saw Event Viewer, which contains kind of system logs, right? And another important thing to note, just a moment, about Event Viewer is that we can filter these. Contains a filter. Let's see if I can grab a hold of this here. There we go. Yeah, so I can kind of filter these as well. Um, yep. And I can also, I can provide an XML filter, XPath. That's a little advanced expression for filtering them. And this one's already filtered for us. You see the filter on top of there. Yeah. Right. And I can filter the current log and I can just look for what this is application. Oh, I don't know. Let's try security. I'll filter it. I only want to see, let's see, filter current log. Yeah, I only want to see logons, logon events. Um, Anytime. Login events are informational. I can look for, of course, I'll be the one for most of these anyways. Administrator. Can also filter by computer, etc. Oh, administrator. Now, and so we can filter those. Um, I must have spelled it wrong. Oh shoot. Yeah, I must have spelled the thing wrong. Um, and so that's an important point about Event Viewer. We have others as well. The disk management. There we go. Hey, yep, disk management, which we'll see in a bit. Um, we can see the volumes, partitions, etc. So they are indeed useful to administrators. Connect servers remotely. That is a really good point here too, as well. If we go, in fact, here we'll go back to services. That's going to be, we won't be able to really connect to any remote machines because we don't have any others yet, but we will. Let's see how it says services local, right click, there we go. So I can connect to another computer. I can browse my network forum. This uses my Active Directory structure. You see, I haven't joined a domain. I'm not part of a domain, so it just says work group, and we'll talk about that too. But I can, search my entire hierarchy. There's nothing to be found here, but I can search my entire hierarchy for another computer and I connect to it and manage the services on that computer. So I can do it all remotely from here. So that's really cool. Yeah, you see, you can install management tools on Windows 11 Workstation. You can manage it. Um, and you can manage it from such a computer, and you don't have to sign in over on that machine. Or actually, excuse me, the other way around. I'm sorry. You can install management tools on Windows 11, and you can actually manage the Windows 2022 servers from the desktop because servers, they can really be headless, right? Meaning they don't present to you a graphical user interface, and so they can be a little bit clunky to use, and that you would have to use PowerShell to sort of issue these commands. And you also may not have a monitor with server machines. They may just be sitting there and you connect to them remotely in such a fashion. Yeah, so here's the disk management. We just saw it, right? You have your volumes, your partitions. So you have a whole bunch of info there, which we'll discuss at another time, which is right now, in fact. To manage disk and volumes on Windows Server 2022 computer, use disk management, right? Disk mgmt.msc for the Microsoft Snap-in console. You can monitor the status, right? Whether they're online, whether they're offline, whether they've been initialized. You can, yep, initialize new disks. When you bring new disks in, you normally have to bring them online. You have to initialize them because they're sort of in a hold state until you decide to bring them on. That's the default, is that they're not initialized. You can create new volumes, write new drive letters, right? F, G, H, I, whatever. Normally you see C and D, right? C generally is going to, out of the box anyway, C is going to be your system partition, and then D, or actually it's going to be, I'm sorry, C is going to be your root install, and then D is going to be your optical drive, although it can vary. Troubleshoot disk problems, yes, we can. And we can also configure RAID, redundant array of independent drives. And that's a little out of scope here, um, but we'll take a peek. Ugh, there we go. So there's my whole volume, right? My volume, my C drive. And it's, excuse me. All right. And so, yeah, it's 50 gig. I have 38.31 gigs free, which is almost 80%. You see the status here, right? All right. File system NTFS on all of these except for my DVD, my optical drive. Doesn't use NTFS files. And notice, remember we created disk one and disk two and they're virtual, but they map to this computer. Remember, we created them when we started. Notice it's offline. Right click, I can bring online, and then I can initialize to actually bring them into the fold and move forward with using them. And I also have I even have my virtual box DVD appears here. Oh yeah, we will see storage pools. We'll discuss storage pools. Don't worry about that. File and print sharing. So yeah, we can use file and print sharing. By default, these features are enabled. Shadow copies are sort of like remember we used to have Windows backups back in the day. If anything went bad with the computer, you'd try to restore the backup, but you only had like a 10% chance of success with those things. Shadow copies are much better. So you have kind of a point in time restore at the operating system level. That's what shadow copies are. Disk quotas. You can enforce disk quotas to particular users or groups. So if you have if you have a disk and you only want, let's say, accounting to be able to use 100 meg of that, um, you can set the disk quota, and it will send pop-ups and warnings when the threshold is about to be exceeded or met. Right. Distributed file system. We'll discuss. Uh, and yeah, you can get really granular in file and print sharing, and we'll have more discussion on it later. It's a good point we don't need to delve into right now. Okay, networking concepts. So this isn't pure networking. We're thinking of a network loosely here, right? In a term of sort of related computers inside of an organization. Windows Workgroup is sort of a smaller collection. Now, if you have a larger enterprise, you'll have a domain or maybe many domains, which we call a forest, right? You can have a hierarchical tree of domains rolling up to a top level domain, and we call that a forest. But not everyone needs that kind of complexity. If you just have maybe 8, 10 users, 15, 20 users, I don't know, you can just create a work group instead. And so these are sort of standalone servers you can log in without having to log into the domain through the domain controller, but you can still control access to resources with a work group. So think of it as maybe a domain light, if you will. There's no central management in a work. So that's the important point. Whereas in a Windows domain, the domain controller is sort of central management, or you'll probably have more than one domain controller in a lot of cases, but they will be the central point. And yes, the role is Active Directory domain services. That will make the computer a domain controller. And yeah, it's a group of computers that share common management or subject to rules defined by an administrator. So it is centrally managed, as opposed to a work group. And they tend to be larger. Domains are going to be larger than work groups in most scenarios. All right. So to have a network connection, you need a network interface. So you have your NIC network interface card, and you also have your device driver software. Your computer natively doesn't really generally know how to talk to the network interface card to have it push the bits out on the wires, send the electrical signals. That's what a device driver is for. So people code these device drivers, low level code that will map functions we want to do with our computer to that network interface, to send the actual bits out on the wire and receive and process the bits from the wire. Configured in the network connections window. Okay, yeah, we'll check it out. And I don't really didn't even need to go to the server to do this. We can obviously see all of our NIC information um, as well in uh, in a non-server class machine. Let's see, adapter options. Is that right? I believe properties. These new interfaces kind of, like I said, I'm old. I'm used to previous versions. So yeah, here we go. Look at this. So we have, IPv4, IPv6, file print sharing. So we have all of these functions available to us if we can enable or disable. And we give you a whole lot of information. Hey, here's our driver, right? What enables the computer to talk to the NIC and vice versa. Do you want to think of it that way? All right. And if I go in here, I can change my IP address here. I'm just getting one from a DHCP server. Remember we discussed DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Um, and it'll get an IP address to use from a machine. It'll lease an IP address for some amount of time. And also domain name service. I obtain my DNS server address automatically, and DNS will allow me, of course, to translate a whole lot of friendly names into IP addresses. I can force these as well. I can force my own IP address. Oh, yeah. Ah. There we go. If I just wanted, if I want to put this IP address in there, for example, with a default gateway, which would be my routing point, 192.168.1.1, I have a 24-bit subnet mask, which means I can kind of natively, without needing the intervention of a router, talk to any machines matching these first three octets here, 192.168.1. So anything that starts with that, I could talk to. A lot of you probably have this networking knowledge already. Instead of automatically, I can force a domain server. I can force a DNS server. So these are layer 2, which is an ISP, or L3, excuse me. L3, which is an ISP. These are L3's DNS servers. They're always up. They've been up, I think, since the 80s. So they're good ones to use if you want to use static ones, or if your DNS server's kind of giving you fits and you need one for external internet use only. These are good servers to use, 4222 and 4223. Network protocol. Yeah, specifies rules and formatted communication between network devices. Right. There are RFCs, requests for comments out there from IEEE, Internet engineering. I don't remember off the top of my head. Internet engineering, electronics, something, or IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, that specifies down to a very deep level these protocols. Um, you have two main protocols. Used to have Apple Bonjour and a whole bunch of others. SNware used to have a whole bunch of them, but mainly all you'll see now is IPv4 and IPv6. Um, these are protocols that specify communication over networks. IPv4 is a little bit older, but still in use a lot today. The problem was it only provided 4 billion addresses. And now we have a lot more devices than that out there on the internet. The problem was kind of mitigated and slowed down a lot with the use of private address spaces. If you want to look up RFC 1918 and read up more on that, it may be fascinating to you. Nowadays, we have IPv6. IPv6 provides us 128-bit addresses. So that's 2 to the 128th. That is, the popular saying is that's more than there are grains of sand on the earth. And so it's a whole lot of addresses. So, with IPv6, address depletion won't be an issue no matter how many addresses are added, or at least it'll be a problem for way, 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 way down the road anyways. Let me not say never, right? But, it will be way down the road. Let me check my time here. Okay. All right. And yeah, to configure network protocol, select and click the properties button, right? As we saw, I did that with IPv4. If I look at IPv6, now look at this big old long field. We have all kinds of funky addressing, we can use with IPv6. We have a lot more flexibility there. That's out of the scope of this course, but just know that. Yeah, there's my network connection right there. Yep, properties as we saw, we have a whole bunch of these we can enable, disable them, we can configure them. We did IPv4 and IPv6, or at least played with it a little bit. Oh yeah, yeah. You know what? Let's not hold on. We'll round out the discussion here. So if you really want to know at a glance, there you go. So we don't have to jump through all of those hoops. So currently, keep in mind, remember I couldn't see my IP address because I was looking at the management for it. And really that was the configuration. It just said, get these automatically. We couldn't see what it actually was. Now, if I do ipconfig, Internet Protocol Configuration, ipconfig, here we go. Here's my IPv6 address. That's that funky thing. And I think I was giving you 2 nibbles instead of 4 between the colons. I don't know. That 4, we can have up to 4 between the colons. You can read up on IPv6 addressing if you like as well, or if you're into networking, you may already know this. It can be fascinating too. Link local is sort of internal use only, but that's also IPv6. And then here's my IPv4 address. Here's my subnet mask. Here's my default gateway. So my IPv4 address is 10.0.2.15. I can communicate, since we have 255, 255 submask, I can communicate natively without having to route to any address starting with 10.0.2. My default gateway is 10.0.2.2, and that's going to be the VirtualBox. VirtualBox has this DHCP server built into it. So that's where it got this stuff from. This is the default gateway and the DNS server. And this is for Ethernet. So this says Ethernet here. Now you can have more than one show up. If I have multiple NICs, I'll have more than one connection show up. They might be named Ethernet, Ethernet 2, Wi-Fi, all kinds of different things. So don't be surprised there. And we can see a little bit more info with the all switch. You see I did ipconfig/all. There we go. Yeah, and so now I have my host name, node type, IP, I have all kinds of goodies here. Hey, there's my DHCP lease. Like I said, it leases an address. There's the lease was obtained a week ago. It's good until, hey, tomorrow. Or no, a month and a week ago. Hey, look at this. Yeah, I was just gonna say, didn't we just install this thing? So that's an interesting little thingy. So I didn't even know that, many cities really had electricity at that time. Uh, all right, networking components. Network client is part of the OS that sends a request to the server to access network sources. Yeah, like I said, we have a client, we have a server. So the client is the one that makes the request. And that's not just for network, right? It could be for anything, but yeah, client is the requester, and the server is the requestee. Now here for network client, yeah, the client software is client for Microsoft Networks. So that's, what enables us to make these requests. Network server software receives a request for shared network resources. And yeah, it is file and print sharing for Microsoft Network. So if you want to access a shared file or want to use a shared printer, all this is happening through file and print sharing. AD services. So if you install Active Directory domain services, that will turn your machine into a domain controller. Like I said, a domain is a centrally managed collection of computers and users, centrally managed. Uh, and domain controller performs authorization authentication. And do you remember the difference? Authentication is yes, you are who you say you are. Authorization is you are authorized to perform the action or you're not, right? That you're requesting. Yeah, you have access to this folder. Yeah, you have access to this printer. No, you don't have access to this file. Stores this information in a centralized database. Yeah, we when we install Active Directory services, I'll actually show you the database. It's not really, it's not a SQL relational database that you're used to seeing. It's actually a little JetBlue database file on disk, and we can take a look at it. We will take a look at it, in fact. Um, and so, yeah, deploy user and computer policies. That's right. We can set policies, group policies. We can set policies for computers, users, groups. Um, we send them out via group policy. Yep, we can install software remotely. We can apply patches. So, think if we had to go to each site and manage this, it would be such a nightmare. And so we luckily have the availability to do this remotely. We can keep an eye on the status as well and know if there are any failures, what machines haven't been patched and such things. Let me check my time here. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop this here, I think, because PowerShell will probably take more than 7 or 8 minutes. So I will stop and we will reconvene here at PowerShell.